place. It is Donald Trump's language that is turning them off. And Kamala Harris is taking full advantage of that. She's reminding voters the kinds of things Donald Trump has said, like, I want to protect women whether they like it or not. He calls her names. He calls her retarded. He calls her names that are very offensive to female voters. But they are also a voting bloc that gets out there. And when you look at those long lines that we've been talking about tonight, and the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign trying to get those people to stay in line, women are very, very motivated and very angry.
Be a razor-thin election, but I do believe that the Democrats have put all of the ingredients, and what we're looking for now is a delicious bowl of gumbo. The roux is there. We just need the salt and the seasoning.
Reince Priebus, I think you predicted 300-plus electoral votes for Donald Trump on Sunday. Standing by that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I look at two things.
No,
George,
in fact, I spoke to a person in the Trump campaign last night who said that their words exactly, we wanted to vomit the last 9 days because he completely got off message, and they're afraid he may have lost it in the last 9 days.
I've been telling you about today, over about 2 weeks. They're concerned about the threat environment here. There have been a lot of threats, and one of the major things that they think that the electorate forgets is the human factor. There are human beings who are running these machines, who are running these polling stations, and they want people to remember that there will be times that somebody forgets to plug in the machine or doesn't turn on the lights outside in the parking lot, and that doesn't mean that there is conspiracy, and it doesn't mean that there is fraud, but already the Trump campaign jumping back on that, telling or making allegations on Twitter that there has been fraud here in Philadelphia, specifically something that the DA has said is just not happening. Governor Josh Shapiro has been telling me for days that the allegations of fraud, a blatant lie.
Democrats think North Carolina was clearly the best chance to pick up a state that Donald Trump had won.
So let's take it. We're so glad you're with us here at ABC News. You're looking live at the tracker of the battleground states tonight. As you can see, the key state of Georgia won by President Biden 4 years ago by just about 11,000 votes. Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris by about 10 points there. Again, many of this is rural counties of that Atlanta metro area. We're waiting for a significant amount of the vote to come in. North Carolina at this hour, Kamala Harris with the lead. Again, it's still early, and this is a reflection in large part of the early vote. And Rick Klein standing by in a moment. They'll break that down, why that is. And of course, Pennsylvania, the polls closing there just 21 minutes ago. Mary Bruce reporting there are long lines. The campaign
in Pennsylvania, in those battleground states, all over the place. It is Donald Trump's language that is turning them off. And Kamala Harris is taking full advantage of that. She's reminding voters the kinds of things Donald I want to protect women whether they like it or not. He calls her names. He calls her retarded. He calls her names that are very offensive to female voters. But they are also a voting bloc that gets out there. And when you look at those long lines that we've been talking about tonight, and the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign trying to get those people to stay in line, women are very, very motivated and very angry. Women I've talked to in these states about what Donald Trump has said, they may stay in those lines. Those low propensity male voters that Donald Trump has gone after, those younger voters who don't usually vote, will they stay in those lines? But we have just seen that massive gender gap.
Yeah, really interesting.
Wow, folks. Let me drop a few comments myself here to three individuals, just three that you basically saw. To Donna Brazil, how's that gumbo tasting now, honey? With the salt and the seasoning and everything? Boy, that gumbo is tasting real good, isn't it? And then for Chris, oh my God, do I need a diet? Christie, talking about the disinformation and the misinformation, the outright lies that he's talking to Trump officials within the Trump campaign. Really? They're giving you information, Chris Christie? Really? Are you actually trying to tell that to the American public there on the Anything But Conservative Network, ABC? That they're just nauseous the last 9 days because Trump he lost the election now. And they basically tell the Republicans, and the Trump campaign that we are the masters of disinformation. Just look in an effing mirror, Chris Christie. But the mirror you're going to have to look in, get one that's extra wide, buddy. And then Martha Raddatz, who is one of the most despicable journalists. She's disgusting in terms of her reporting because it's all full of lies, hardly any factual content. What's she saying over there? Oh, those long lines. Every time I saw a picture of a long line, you know what I saw? I saw it was 75, 80% men standing in a line. Whenever they're showing this on the media news, I very rarely saw lines in which, when they're panning, that you saw the majority of women there. It was men. And then she said there was a huge women's gap. Based on what? And then she's wondering, those low propensity voters, they're going to drive to a location. They're going to wait in line. But then after 15, 20 minutes, they're going to say, screw this. I ain't waiting any longer. But the Harris people, they were telling everybody, you stay there in line. Martha Raddatz is a hack journalist. She has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. Anyways, folks, you're watching the Dr. Nassar Sheikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nassar. Let's get back to more of the Anything But Conservative Broadcasting Network, ABC, and their election night meltdown. It continues. Watch this.
Voters that we had been talking about, for those dissatisfied Republican voters. I think back to an event in Bucks County just a couple weeks ago where Harris was standing there on stage with over 100 Republican officials and aides to former Republican presidents, making the argument, echoing the argument that Liz Cheney has made to Republicans.
Wow, 100 extra votes for Harris.
Put country above party, and you don't have to tell anyone
going to get you the most votes
your
tonight.
vote.
And also, you've got to go for it. I think one of the interesting things that we haven't talked about tonight was, if you look at Osceola County in Florida, if you look at that county, you'll see that Donald Trump right now is winning that county. That is a very heavy Puerto Rican county. And if you go look at 2020, he lost that county by 12, 13 points. It's a pretty amazing thing. The other thing that's going on right now is Virginia is about tied with about 40 to 45% of the vote in, which is one of the things that political folks out there look at, because it's a pretty quick state. They close at 7 p.m. And for a lot of us, we look at Virginia to kind of get a sense on where things are at.
It's getting a lot of attention so far as Loudoun County. These are suburbs and kind of extended areas outside Washington, D.C. This is the part of the state that has made Virginia essentially a blue state at the national level. And it's a place that you can see Hillary Clinton getting about 56%. Joe Biden goes up to 61. So far tonight, it's about 95% of the vote in. Harris is looking more like Hillary Clinton in Virginia. Now, she won the state as well, but that's not the kind of trend line you'd want. And again, these are highly educated suburban voters. These are places where you'd expect Harris to do extremely well. She's going to be hitting her benchmarks. I don't think it's a real concern in the Harris campaign right now. But as you know, that Donald Trump is going to be running up his numbers in more conservative parts of the state. This is where Reince is right, that it could be a warning sign for other trends we're seeing elsewhere in the country.
Or a tighter race than it was 4 years ago.
Definitely that. I mean, we can look at a state like Florida right now, which is going overwhelmingly Republican. I don't think we're going to see the same kind of trend in Virginia, but we're not seeing Democrats overperform in the same way Republicans are in the red state of Florida.
Let's go to what Johnson
throughout the entire evening,
now,
folks.
Far more red than it was even just a decade ago. What are we seeing as far as Latino voters, Lindsay, in Florida?
This is kind of foreboding potentially for the Harris campaign. When you take a look at the Hispanic and Latino vote in Florida, 24%, they account for the electorate. Look at this. Donald Trump leading by 16 points over.
Just put that into the mindset of the Harris campaign on that evening, getting these type of results, and the major news networks, and just take a look at the faces of these network anchors and the hosts being absolutely gobsmacked by a 16-point trouncing of Hispanics and Latinos going to Donald Trump. And this was early trends on election night, folks. Absolutely amazing. And you can just imagine what was going on. But we all knew this from, if you were looking at the right polls, not the ones that were done by corporate entities or by leftist hacks, but real pollsters like Rasmussen, Atlas Intel, The People's Pundit, Seth Kessel, On Point Politics, Gold Crown Politics, even I had made predictions, and you can check the videos out in terms of where the trends were going to be, what we were expecting with black voters, Latino voters, Hispanic voters, Asian voters, Muslim voters, white voters, men, women. Our electoral college predictions. I had called it that he was going to win the popular vote by over 1.5 million. So we've got our stuff already out there. But this, we were also saying that Latinos were going to go double digits for Trump.
Kamala Harris. He's getting 57% of the vote. He's actually doing 11 points better with Latinos than he did in 2020. And Republicans actually haven't won the Latino vote since 2004. Now, some people might say, well, you know, there are a lot of Cuban voters in particular in Florida, but still, she's actually underperforming. And Cuban voters tend to go with Republicans, so that's not so unusual. But she's also underperforming with the Latino vote when it comes to battleground states of Georgia and also Pennsylvania.
Like most voters, the top issues for Latinos are the economy, inflation, crime, and immigration. And we know that former President Trump does better on those issues. Now, there is anecdotal indications and some polling on Spanish language media that shows that the so-called joke at Madison Square Garden, calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, has moved some Puerto Rican voters her way in Pennsylvania.
Bullshit.
To over 400,000 Puerto Rican voters, as well as North Carolina and Georgia with hundreds of thousands. And
all
here in
lies.
Florida, where Puerto Ricans are the second largest Latino voting bloc, I know previous said that they were leaning.
This is all hopium, folks. It's all hopium, and they're using copium. And again, misinformation, disinformation, false information. That didn't do. Now, did it sway a few? Probably. But remember the article that came out in the newspaper? This is going to sink it. That's it. The island in the ocean, it's not going to sink, but it's going to cause the Trump campaign to sink. That's what the whole narrative was. It was as if the entire Puerto Rican, no. They made a joke about our home country, Puerto Rico. What are we going to do? We're going to have to vote against Donald Trumpola. Come on, come on. This lady's just reporting a bunch of bullshit news.
Towards Trump, but we have to wait till we see those results. There's also indication that the insult on Puerto Rico could have influence on other Latino voters who have expressed
they voted for Trump
in solidarity with Puerto Ricans. They say an insult to one of ours is an insult to all.
Maria Salinas, where's the benchmark for Fulton County? Where does she need to be performing? Well, she's just below it.
She's about a point below that. And just to put it in perspective,
Fulton
County
of course it's
is
right that under Florida's rules, this amendment failed. But you look at the numbers, 57% of Floridians actually did vote to protect abortion under the state's constitution. So it just has a higher threshold than other states. So, of course, it's right this amendment failed.
Republican parts of the state, Donald Trump hitting his numbers just about everywhere. I haven't found many places yet where he isn't hitting where he wants to be in terms of the 538 benchmarks or in terms of the history. The turnout machine, even if it wasn't on the ground the same way it was for the Democrats, seems to have been working, at least in these initial numbers in Michigan.
See again? You see again? This guy's saying that the ground game of Trump isn't as effective as the ground game of Harris. What type of... these guys are seeing the trends out there, but they just can't they just can't bring their souls, their journalistic souls, to basically admit that the Harris campaign, their ground game was an absolute freaking mirage. The Trump ground game were the water. No mirage about that. None whatsoever.
What are some of the numbers starting to come in as well as voters begin to fill in their ballots? What are some of the key concerns?
Right, when we look at some of this preliminary exit poll data, what we see is that the state of democracy has actually edged out the economy as the number one issue that voters care about as they consider who to vote for, followed by the economy. Abortion, you see there in the middle with 14% of voters saying.
This, again, is just a bullshit poll. State of the democracy. If that's the case and the way they voted, then the way that the Trump voters were looking at the state of democracy was completely different than the way, obviously, the Kamala Harris campaign and their acolytes in the media were talking about the state of democracy. But this is just another bullshit poll to drive that narrative. I'm surprised they didn't increase the number of the abortion percentage, because they might as well should have put that second and have economy down here. I mean, that's a narrative that they wanted to spin in this direction.
That immigration, which has been an issue that
and
the Trump campaign
immigration,
has really
fourth?
leaned into.
Are you kidding me?
Falling there at the fourth slot at 11%, and foreign policy at the end.
Let's look at Georgia.
Wow.
What do we see?
All right.
Yeah, so Georgia's trending a little bit worse, at least in our numbers right now for Harris. 210,000. Trump seems to be in a pretty good position right now, but we're still waiting on so much vote. But just to take you
I'm
around
hearing that they're still very excited about what they're seeing. They're cautiously optimistic about North Carolina. They feel like there's not enough there for the Harris campaign to make up the ground that they need to make up. They're happy about what's happening in Ohio, that they seem to be up by 10 at this point. And historically, Ohio's been in our party sort of a mental issue where if we're not winning by 10 in Ohio, we're worried about everything else, and that number looks good. There is some, they're nervous about Pennsylvania. There's a lot of vote that's out there. They know that there is a ton of early vote that hasn't even been touched. So there's no arrogance about that, but now all the attention's going to start moving to that blue wall. Virginia being tied is another issue that is getting them excited. They weren't expecting Virginia to be tied. There's 60% of the vote in, I think, about now in Virginia. The fact that that's tied and in the suburbs, Trump did not do
at that time of the
badly
night, that was
around
exciting.
Washington, D.C.
Could be a signal for other states. Matt, what are you hearing?
Every time they went to Reince, he was pretty much spot on. He was quite optimistic, but it was early in the returns, at least when he was talking about Pennsylvania. And so, but everything that they were reporting to him, the information he was getting from the Trump war room was pretty much throughout the night, absolutely spot on. And in places where it was still early, cautiously optimistic, but still basically saying that the trends were favoring Trump, and you would rather be Trump than Harris at all points during, the evening. And you heard it the other way around from all the other pundits who literally, we all know were in the pockets of the Harris campaign. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasser Sheikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasser. You all know what to do. Subscribe, like, and share this video if you think it's bringing you great content. Put your comments down below. What do you think of Alternative Broadcasting Corporation or anything but conservative ABC and its hosts, David and the like, Chris Christie, Raditz, Donna Brazil, right? They were homers. All right, that's fine. I'm a homer too. I was for Trump. We all were. Anyways, my final thought. When you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, I'll take care and stay safe.